Welcome back to the channel where we simplify technology for you. For this episode, we will talk about Google Forms, the ultimate guide for everyone. So this session will cover how to create Google Forms, the different objects, and how to use Google Forms to collect data, the right question type, and then how do we analyze the results after you implement the form. So let's get started on how to create Google Forms. So there are three ways: the Google Apps Launcher, the Google Drive, or the URL shortcuts. Let's start with by creating a new tab, and let's start with the use of Google Apps Launcher. So here is the Google Apps Launcher on the upper right corner, wherein when you click it, you will see the different tools of Google Workspace, and you can click Google Forms. Once you click Google Form, you will be pointed to all the forms that you have created and shared with you, and you can create a Google Form by clicking the blank icon. So when you click the blank icon, you have a fresh new form. So that's the first one using Google Apps Launcher. Or you can also go to your Google Drive by creating a new tab, and let's say we go to Google Drive from our tab page. We can now click new from the left pane and then click Google Form. So once we click Google Form, you will see that you have a fresh new form. So it takes lesser steps, okay? So let's go to the third option, which is using a shortcut. There are two URLs that we can use. The first one is forms.google.com. So let's create a new tab and type forms.google.com. And when you click and when you press the return key, you will have the same thing when you click the Google Apps Launcher and click Forms. So you can again create a new blank form using the blank icon. Okay. And the last option is forms.new. So when you create a new tab and then you type forms.new, you will have a fresh form. So these are the different ways of creating Google Forms. Let us now continue with how to use Google Forms to collect data. Since we already have created the blank form, and by default it has the question type, multiple choice. Okay, so it's multiple choice type of question. We are now going to create different question types. So there are several categories. The first one is when you want the respondent to type something. There are two types: the short answer and comments, or the paragraph, wherein it has a difference between the short answer and comments. So let's start with that. So by default, it is multiple choice type question. As I mentioned, there are different types: short answer and comments, selection, rating, collect a file, and date and time. So let's change the default, which is multiple choice. So if you want to ask for their name, last name, first name, or a short information that they have to type, you may use the short answer. Okay, so that is like giving their a word, or like such as name, first name, middle initial. So you make use of short answer. While if you're asking for their home address, for example, or a comment, you may want to use the paragraph, because a paragraph. So let's change this one first to short answer. So let's start with name or last name or nickname. So you have the respondent will have a blank text box. Okay, so another type of typing, asking for the respondent using a typing tool, is the paragraph. For example, you want to ask for their home address, okay, or billing address, for example. So if you're asking for example, the gender, for example, when you click an add question, it's always by default multiple choice. So for example, gender, instead of typing it, to make it standardized, because others may say boy or girl, other may say male, female. So if you want to standardize the selection, you may use the multiple choice type of question. So later on in data cleaning, it's easier for you. So for example, male and then female. Okay, so, or prefer not to say, for example, prefer not to say. So this is a multiple choice type of question. Okay, so you may also require each question to be to be filled out by the respondent. Okay. So another type of question wherein you have a selection is that when you use multiple choice, you only have one possible answer. Now let's have another selection type. Let's say, for example, hobbies. Okay, so with hobbies, you can have multiple answers using a checkbox, but you have prepared some option. For example, biking, swimming, reading. Okay, and then you may also add other. So because you cannot enumerate everything, you may want them to type on their own and their particular answer. But in this case, multiple choice type of question um, can only have one answer, while check boxes can have more than one answer. Okay, so the other type of question is rating. So if you will notice, when you add a question, for example, we're done with the home address. When you click the add a new question, you will see that the the selection for the question type is arranged per area. So these are short answer or paragraph wherein the user or the respondent will type something. These are the choices. There are choices. So you have provided them the choices. And then we have file upload if you want to collect them. If you want to collect a file from the respondent, like photo or a document, so you may use file upload. While the linear scale, multiple choice grid, and checkboxes is used for rating or there's a range or a comment. So let's have an example for drop down. So for drop down, if you have more than, for example, this one, instead of having multiple output here, maybe we can show you, I'll show you how to show it first. How does the respondent will see all this question type? So let's click on preview. So we have now the last name. So here we can type, let's say, Garcia, and then this is the multiple choice type. There can only be one answer, and then let's say select hobbies, and then we have paragraph here, for example, address line 1, and then we can press enter. Compared to a short answer, you cannot press enter. Address line 2. So you can have multiple lines if you use a paragraph. Okay, so unlike the short answer, you can only have one line. If you press enter, nothing will happen. So this is multiple choice. You can only select one answer, while the hobbies, you can have more than one answer, and you can even supply another one. Okay, and this is the drop down. So we haven't supplied the question yet, so let's continue by editing the form. So if you have other options, so let's say the question will be let's say selection for games, for selection for anything. Okay, so for anything. So we can have option 1, and then we can have option 2, option 3. So when you click preview again, you will see that the choices will have this. So it's a drop down, because if you have more than 4, for example, it's better to have the drop down. So that's the difference between multiple choice and drop down. Now, again, each question type, they have the option to be required, wherein the respondent cannot miss it or not, or may answer it or not. So using the required option. While the more option, you can add a description, for example, for a short answer, meaning the last name. So last name, for example, please type them properly, meaning first letter should be capital if you want them to type it that way. So you may also give a guide, for example, Garcia. Okay, so it's up to you now. And then since it's a last name, there are questions that you need to ask specifically, like last name, if it's information. Okay, so you can explore other question type like So let's add another one. So for the other type are basically linear scale for evaluation or multiple choice grid. You can also ask for the date and the time. Okay, so these are the different question type. Now, you can also, if you want to have other items aside from the actual question, let's say you want to put some text without actually answering something, you may want to use the adding of text, and you may also add images and video from YouTube. Now, you can also have, if you have several questions, you may want to break it down using add section. So, for example, aside from last name, let's just make use of the section instead of having a long several viewing all the question in one section. You can add section, so this will be the second page. Okay, so when you click preview, you will see that it will only display the first question, which is the last name, and then you have the automatic button next, and then you will see that since it's an email, it's a requirement. I am collecting an email, so we can now we cannot move to the next section if we don't answer a specific item. So when we click next, that is the only time we can see the rest of the question. And then if it's the end of the question of the form, you will have by default the submit button, and you also have the option to go back. Now you will see it's untitled because we haven't really given a name for the form. So the title of the form that the respondent can see is on this particular part, the title of the form. So for example, sample information sheet, okay, or form. So, okay, so this is the title of the form that the respondent can see. But by then, we are saving this already in our Google Drive, and by default, the file name of the form is untitled form. But when you click it, it will make use of the title of the form, and you may organize it by clicking move to a folder, but by default it's under my drive. Okay, so this is how you create different question type in Google Form. So we're done creating our form. So let's go, and how do we implement now our form? So let's go back to the form. So earlier I clicked the preview button. Okay, so when you click the preview button, you can see how you'll see how it is seen by the respondent. Now, you may get the URL, this URL, so that is one of your option, or you have another option is when you are in the edit mode, there are ways of getting the link. So you can send it to respondents using an email by typing their email addresses here. So because by default it is by mail, or you can get the link here and then you can click copy. You may also want to shorten the URL because by default it's a bit long. So if you want to shorten it, just click shorten, and then this is the one that you're going to give to the respondent, and then you may click copy. Or you may use the embed option if you want to put it in a website. Okay, so that's how you send the form to respondents. Okay, so usually we make use of the shortened URL, and then just click copy, and then we can email them. You can put it in any form of you can send it via different option. Okay, so let's close the different ways of sending the form. Now, in a Google Workspace tool, usually the upper right corner has the share button. So let's say you want to collaborate with others. How do you collaborate? Meaning you can ask people or your collaborators to add questions to the form. So we can click the more options button, and then we can add their email addresses by clicking the add collaborators, and then just click or type their email addresses. Okay, so there are also options like you can let editors change permission and share it with other editors or the people that they want to ask help from, or you can also prevent the viewers and commenters to download, print, and copy. Okay, so usually we don't like people to copy our form, so we can uncheck this. Okay, so you can also uncheck this if it's a sensitive form and you don't want others to edit the form. Okay, so you have that particular option. So after typing their email addresses, just click done. Okay, so that's how you collaborate, and that's how you send the form to respondents. There are other options, like you can change the color. Like for example, by default, these are the default um, looks of the form, so you may change the color to another color like green. Okay, and you can also have an image on the header part, so you can just simply explore them. You can change the font style and font size of the text and the question itself. So that's how you change the settings of Google Form. Now let's continue analyzing results. So we can analyze the responses in the form using the summary or individual responses. Now, as of this time, there's no response yet, but let me show you when you share it to others. Let's say I have filled this out. I'll just click next and then I put something here, and then let's say select anything, option 2, and then let's remove the last option. Okay, so let me just delete this one. Okay, let me preview it again and continue. That's a good thing with Google Form. If the respondent don't have the luxury of time to finish the form, they can continue with it later. When they go to the same link, they can see all their responses and continue where they left. Okay, so let's say continue, and then I'll click submit. When I click submit, so remember that we have the design view, you will see we have the responses tab. So the question tab is where we add question. Okay, the responses tab is where we get to see the responses on the form. So you will see that this is the response, a summary, because there's only one respondent as of this time. So let me add another one. So let's say I'll click. So this one is the settings of the form is collecting the current email that is logged in, okay, in the browser. So let's say Salvador, and then I'll click next, and then let's say female, and then I'll say swimming, and then address 2, address 1, and then address 22. Okay, and then let's say we select option 1 because in the first entry we selected option 2, and then let's click submit. Now let's go back to the responses tab. You will see that there are 2 responses now, and they are both coming from a specific email address, and then the specific responses are Garcia and Salvador, and you will see it creates a chart for you. Okay, so the color is female, the red is for female. There are one response for female and 1 response for male, so 50-50%. So we also have the guide here, and if you need this to be included in a document or a chart or in a slide, you can simply click copy and paste them. Okay, so that's how you analyze. Now you can see there are people who answered biking, swimming, and reading 111. Okay, so these are the specific addresses. So we have limited responses as of this time. That is why we only have 50% for the 2 option, but we already have 3 options. So that's how you analyze the responses. Now let's go to the settings tab, because this is an important one. If you're a teacher, you can make this as a quiz, and you have to supply the correct answer for each question by going back to the question. If you are only using Google Form to consolidate or get responses, you don't have to make use of this. But under the responses, there are other settings. For example, if you notice earlier, since I am using my email, it is collecting my email addresses, and it should be verified, which means they have to sign in their Gmail account or Google Workspace account. And the other options are do not collect email, which means there's no need for them to log in, which means when they can make use of incognito, they don't have to log in. Another option is by responder input, which means that the form will be the one to input their email addresses. But I don't suggest this because they might commit typographical errors, so it should be verified if you want to collect their email addresses. Okay, so there are times that we do not collect email addresses, but if our intention is to go get back to the respondent, we make use of the verified. And also, you have the option to send responders a copy of their response by turning it on. Okay, so you have two options: when it's on, when requested, or when or always. So by default, it's turned off. So it's up to you now what you want to use. Now, also, if it's a quiz for teachers, allow response editing should be turned off if it's a quiz. But there are times that the Google form is used for an open-ended question or a survey. You may allow response editing. So if you are using Google Workspace, you may limit the respondent from, again, limit to one response if it's a quiz for teachers. But for poll, for example, you can use Google Forms for poll to vote for something. You may want to turn this on if it's not a quiz. Now, in presentation, you may also want to have progress bar. So progress bar is, since we have created a section, it will show you how many pages there's still to work on if you turn this on. Now, remember that while the shuffle question order, you may want to mix this male, female, or the choices in the multiple choice or in the check boxes. If it's a quiz, again, if you don't want the students to copy or shuffle the question order, you may turn them on. By default, when they submit the Google form, this is the confirmation message, but you may want to change it by clicking edit. Okay? And if it's not a quiz, you may want to show the respondent, or if it's a poll, you may want to see the summary of the poll. So by turning this on. So these are the settings that you can do with Google Form. Now, if you have any question or other inquiries about Google Form, just make sure to leave a comment down below so you can ask away.